Welcome to the 6 Miles to Supper podcast. I'm your host, Kayla Cox, and I've lost over 80 pounds with intermittent fasting 6 days a week, eating whatever I wanted at my meals, taking a cheat day every Sunday, and walking 6 miles a day. And I'm here to help you on your weight loss journey. In today's episode, I'm going to talk about intermittent fasting in maintenance mode and what that looks like for me. And a listener asked for this topic, and they wanted to know about my specific, what do I do in maintenance mode? I hope that by me sharing what I do in maintenance mode, it can help you when you're forming your own maintenance plan. Because, I feel like it's just like with weight loss. It's a very individual thing. You have a life that is probably very different than my life. And with that in mind, your plan should probably look a lot different than my plan. But in today's episode, I will talk about what I do, what my maintenance looks like, and some general features that have stayed pretty consistent over the years. And even though, sometimes things do change or I'll experiment with things, there have been some really consistent features over the course of time. So in general, I still weigh every day. I routinely walk 6 miles. I practice intermittent fasting 6 days a week, and I take a cheat day on Sunday. Now, one thing about the weight loss journey was I really started to understand myself better. In hindsight, I realized that when I was obese, I wasn't very self-aware. I wasn't able to observe myself. I wasn't really aware of how much I was eating. I wasn't aware of how little I was moving. I wasn't aware, of just kind of my whole state of mind and my motivations for doing what I was doing. And losing weight actually helped me to learn a lot about myself. And I think that's one of the best things that has come out of the weight loss journey, really, is that I know myself a lot better now. And with that in mind, I keep those things that I've learned about myself in the forefront of my mind when I'm thinking about maintenance, because maintenance is for the rest of my life, right? And so that is a long, long time. So one thing I learned about myself is that I'm a rebel. And if you've ever listened to Gretchen Rubin, she has a book called The 4 Tendencies. But basically, you can take this little quiz and it'll tell you what kind of person you are. Well, when I take that quiz, I'm a rebel. And when I read the definition of rebel, I thought, that is me to a T. And basically what it means is that I'm the type of person who, if someone else tells me what to do, I immediately don't want to do it. And I also rebel against myself. So if I try to tell myself to do something, I immediately don't want to do it. So it's very hard to get myself to do the things that I say I want to do. But how that plays out in the weight loss journey, I think, is that I need a lot of freedom. I need to keep it pretty loosey-goosey, which is probably why eating all the food, not having any kind of restrictions in place for my actual which foods I eat is really helpful. The same with not having really strict, any kind of pace goals or anything for my walking, because I need to keep it, where I can walk at any pace I want so that I'll want to go out and do the walk. And I'm always monitoring myself for resentment, because I feel like, whenever my freedom is restricted, that's when I start to feel resentment. So if I ever start to feel resentment, then I will change whatever it is that I'm doing so that that resentment goes away. So that's a very important thing to me. If I ever am noticing resentment, I do change it. And that is an important rule for me. I always have a goal and a plan in maintenance. So my goal in maintenance is to maintain my weight in the 140s. Now, back, in 2016, my goal was different. I wanted to maintain within 5 pounds of 157 or 158. And then, I lost more weight. And then when I got down into the 140s, I decided to maintain again. And I decided at that point, I wanted to give myself more freedom and have a bigger range to maintain in, just to say the 140s. That was just easier for me. And it was something that I felt like that was the right kind of goal for me, maintaining in the 140s, because the 140s is in the normal BMI range. Anything below 154 for my height is the normal BMI range. So that's how I picked where I wanted to maintain. Now, I say the 140s. I picked the 140s, and I didn't say just under 154, because I don't want to be that close to being overweight again. I mean, that's just for me, that's just a mental thing. I don't really think those few pounds would matter that much. When I was maintaining up higher than that, in the 150s, back in 2016, 2017, I felt great there. And I felt wonderful and I felt like I was very healthy. So, the maintaining at a lower weight, I don't feel like it has a huge impact on health. If I ever got above 154, I don't think the world would end. But I do try to keep it in the 140s just because it gives me a little buffer. Like if my weight does creep up into like the 150s, which has been as high as like, I think 152 for various and sundry reasons. But if it ever does get up towards there, then I'm more of the mindset of, okay, now I'm in weight loss mode and I want to get back down into the 140s and then just maintain there. So that's how I think about it. So weighing every day is a key thing for me when it comes to maintenance. I weigh every single day. I don't ever take a break from weighing. And the reason I do that is because I know myself well. I know about myself that when I stop weighing, I stop holding myself accountable in all of the different ways. And I kind of tend to, if I do that, like historically, I would say before 2015, because there was a period of time before 2015 that I just didn't weigh. For years, I did not weigh. And that's when I became obese. So I know about myself that if I ever stop weighing and stop holding myself accountable, the weight can pack on and it can pack on fast. I can easily gain weight. I'm a really easy gainer and I'm a hard loser, I guess, too. So that's my weight goal. So I want to maintain in the 140s. Now, how I maintain to me is less important. The main thing to me is like, okay, I just want to maintain in this range. I don't care so much about my, fasting window, how long it may be or anything like that. The main goal is I just keep it in that right weight range. And I've experimented, throughout this process with, how do I want to eat? Do I want to go back to eating 3 meals a day, or do I want to eat 2 meals a day, or do I want to still do OMAD, or do I want to rotate through, throughout the week, sometimes do OMAD, sometimes do a 16-8, sometimes do, 12-12, and I experiment a lot, again, because I love freedom. So I've done that. And there have been times where I've been experimenting like that and the weight starts to rise and I think, okay, well, that means that this isn't really going to be a good way for me to maintain. So I try to come up with a plan that just keeps my weight right in that range and it's not causing gain. Now, but what I have found through all of that experimentation is that generally I like to skip breakfast. And here's why. I really like to eat big meals. I like big portions. I don't do well with small meals. Like small meals, they leave me hungry. And I am aware that it's all about the calories, I think, or at least, I'm convinced that basically it has to do with how many calories you're intaking every day. And so I know that you could, space those calories out throughout the day and, you could eat the same amount and lose the same weight. So you could have, 6 small meals a day and maintain your weight loss just like you would with 1 big meal a day or 2 meals a day or whatever. But I do better. Like I feel less hungry. I feel more satisfied when I eat a larger portion at my meal or at my meals. So 3 big meals a day obviously doesn't really work. So with that in mind, 2 meals a day, 1 meal a day, those 2 things work for me really well. I have also found I prefer to structure my day so there's less eating in it. I like the time that is created when I'm not, stopping for breakfast, stopping for lunch. I like to be able to get up, do my morning routine, have my coffee, get started on my work. Then throughout the day, I'll maybe have another coffee or 2, and then have my main meal be supper. I really do like that kind of structure. And occasionally I like to say, well, I like to have lunch and supper. But in general, I have found I do not snack. I don't like to snack. I have a tendency to want to like to snack because snacking for me is a manifestation of stress eating, basically. What I've found is that when I am wanting to snack, it is because I am stressed. So if I find myself saying, well, I feel like a snack right now, I use that as a red flag to say, okay, I need to pause here because I'm stressed out about something or I'm not eating enough at my meal. So I always try to eat enough at my meal so that snacking is not even a temptation. So with intermittent fasting, I'm still practicing some form of that 6 days a week. Now, Sunday, as always, and this has been a consistent feature since the beginning of 2016, certainly, I have always taken Sundays off. So meaning I have no rules at all as far as when to eat and how often to eat. I do just tell myself, don't overeat and try not to stress eat, And that's a difficult thing, by the way, to know at the time whether you're actually stress eating or not. It's usually something you can kind of see in hindsight, but I know myself pretty well now. I can tell usually when I am eating just because I'm stressed or eating because I'm bored or if I'm actually hungry. And then I continue to routinely walk the 6 miles. Now, in weight loss mode, I would walk 7 days a week. And then I started to experiment this past year with taking Sundays off from walking. And I wanted to do that because Sunday is my day off from work. It's my day off from fasting. I just take it as a Sabbath. So I thought to myself, maybe it would be a good idea to just take off my Fitbit and just not have a goal for that day. And I've enjoyed that, actually. I have noticed that I feel better, though, when I do get out and go for some sort of walk that day. If I just lay around all day, I really don't feel great that day or the day following. So I do like to get out and go for a walk, but I don't put on my Fitbit. And also, my life changed too from, 2016 compared to the present day. Something that is very different now is that for the past 2 years, I've been traveling full time in an RV. And so with that came this kind of really a complete change in lifestyle. And whereas, back when I was living in a traditional house, had a set routine, we weren't traveling at all. And so it was much easier to be very, very consistent with steps every single day. But in traveling, and especially in the past year, we instituted a exploration day. And so sometimes that means that I don't get my steps in that day because it's a family day. And it kind of depends on what kind of day it is, whether I get my steps in or not. Like we may be, driving a really long distance to somewhere. I mean, there have been times where we've gone, we've driven 3 hours from our campground to go look at something cool or experience something, and then driving that whole way back. And there's just, there's not enough time in the day. I mean, I could do that. I could say, nope, when I get back, I'm going to go outside and walk for 2 hours. And there's a time and a place for that, I suppose. But again, this goes back to I have lost the weight at this point, and this is about thinking for the rest of my life, what is sustainable. And so, on those days where it's like, I steps didn't fit in this day, that's okay. And that does mean that it's not as consistent. But again, I go back to, am I maintaining where I want to maintain? And that is the thing that holds me accountable. And so that's how I approach maintenance in general. Now, recently, obviously, if you're listening to this in the future, I'm going to tell you what's going on right now. The country has been on lockdown since, for us, it's been about since April 1st. And I'm recording this at the end of April. And right now, things are starting to kind of open up again. But for a lot of us, life changed. Now, my life in some ways changed and in some ways didn't really change very much because, living in an RV, we're pretty isolated already and we're introverts too. So my day-to-day life did not change very much. I work from home. I do make an income from YouTube and from selling books and from courses and that kind of thing. So I do earn my income from home. So that didn't really get affected as far as my day-to-day life. I'm still, doing the things in the normal kind of routine. So even though my day-to-day life wasn't affected, my income did get affected by this. And I mean, just to let you know, it is back on the upswing and it's all good now. But at the time, especially in the thick of things, it was very uncertain. And it felt really uncertain on how long all of this would go on. And so life kind of became chaotic. And when life becomes chaotic, I need my maintenance plan to be more orderly. Because if there's too much chaos, then that's just stressful for me. Like, I really love my freedom, but when there's so much uncertainty, then I feel like that brings in more stress because whereas normally I like to say, well, I'll mix it up, and I'll do maybe 2 meals today. And sometimes I'll do like a 18-6 or whatever. Having those things means that there's more of an opportunity for stress eating and, or, eating out of procrastination or, eating because you're bored, although I haven't been bored lately. But when I realized okay, life is chaotic right now, I sat myself down and said, what would bring me the most peace right now? And so I said, okay, I'm going to go back to doing OMAD 6 days a week, because that just takes stress eating out of the equation, which I like being able to have that kind of freedom of saying, well, today I feel like doing 2 meals, or today I feel like doing an 18-6. I like having that freedom, but it's also, I would say, each time that I do that, it is a kind of a bit of a training for myself, like I'm training myself to get better about, not stress eating. Because if I'm eating, say 2 meals, I have to not eat at, like as big of a portion as I would when I eat 1 meal. So it's kind of a, it takes, I would say, a little bit more thought, and it takes up more mental space. So when I sat down, I said, okay, OMAD would simplify my life right now. So I went back to doing OMAD 6 days a week. Walking, I continued to do that because I asked myself, like, would it make things easier on me right now if I just said no step goal? But I decided no. If anything, it's more important to me now to go out for my walks and to clear my mind and things like that. I still take the cheat day on Sunday because I have found that having at least 1 day of freedom a week is very important for me. And so this was an act of self-compassion for me to just sit myself down and say, hey, everyone's going through a rough time right now. What would be the loving, compassionate thing to do for yourself? And that's how I came up with my rules. And I do allow myself different kinds of rules when, like if we go see family, just like I've always done, my rule for myself is always like if I am at an event, even if I would be doing OMAD that day, if there's an event and there's food, I will eat at it. So like yesterday we went to visit my in-laws. And so that was just basically a free day for me. Like I did not get my steps in. We went there. It was like a 3-hour drive there. We went there. We spent the day hanging out with them. There was food, of course, and we sat there and I ate all sorts of food, all sorts of goodies, and we had a wonderful time. And then, we drove back, and by the time we got back home, it was basically bedtime. And so I didn't get my steps in. I ate basically all day long, and that is part of maintenance. That is part of just living life, is that you have a plan, and then sometimes you go off, and I always try to go off according to my rules and always with intention. So that's what my life looks like in maintenance mode right now. Now, I am very confident that things are getting back to normal. Where I am, it's a more rural area, but, the state has opened back up. Things to me appear to be getting back to normal. And I'm sure that once life becomes more orderly, my outer life, that probably my maintenance will go back to being a bit more loosey-goosey as far as, how I practice intermittent fasting. I'll experiment more, I'm sure. But I hope that by sharing that, it helps you as you're formulating your own maintenance plan. And remember, know yourself well and then make your rules based on what you know. So thank you for listening to this episode, and I'll see you in the next one. Do you want to lose the weight without getting rid of the foods you love and that you'll go back to eating again anyway? My book, The Laid Back Guide to Intermittent Fasting, teaches you how to practice intermittent fasting so that you lose the weight sustainably and keep it off for good. You can get the audiobook read by me for free when you sign up for your 30-day trial of Audible. The link is in the show notes. And if you've gotten value from this podcast and you'd like to let other people know about it, it'd be great if you could leave a review on either iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. Thanks.